Floods happen anywhere where there is an over excessive amount of water. Houston and its surrounding areas suffered heavily because of flooding by Hurricane Harvey. Island island nations like Haiti and Puerto Rico get really affected when anything more than a Category 3 hurricane goes by. Puerto Rico is still affected to this day, and isn't told by the news. Heck, where I live currently requires you to have a flood insurance because I live on a 100-year floodplain, and there is a creek that cuts through the property, and it does not take much water for the creek to overfill and flood the road. The worst it got was Father's Day in 2015 before my senior year, and it just rained constantly to the point where my family had to go to a motel for the night because we didn't know how high the water was going to be. So that being said, Mesopotamia was between two rivers where it would make sense they would have quite a few flood stories.
So, yeah, we're going to be talking about flood myths. I have already talked about Atrahasis in my video on creation myths, so I will talk about the flood part very briefly. In Atrahasis, because of the error the gods made when they were creating humans, according to Atrahasis, we couldn't die from old age. So, floods were a way for the gods to take care of overpopulation along with famine and plagues. Atrahasis was told by the god Enki to build a boat and to reject possessions and save living things. Atrahasis saves his family while Atrahasis saves his family, wild animals, and himself, and the Great Flood happens. All the other people are wiped out. After 7 days and nights, the rest of the gods find out about the boat after a sacrifice was made. And the god Enlil is angry because he was the one who ordered the flood to happen. And after that, it was decided that humans should grow old and die, so they won't have to worry about overpopulation like what they had to deal with in the past. Another flood myth is actually part of a much bigger story called the Epic of Gilgamesh. I will be doing a video that'll be, well, I'll be doing a couple of videos on the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is long and a lot of stuff happens in the Epic of Gilgamesh, so it'll be more than one part. But For context, his Gilgamesh's friend, Enkidu, he dies, and because of him dying, Gilgamesh starts to become scared of his own death. So he goes on a journey to find the man who survived the Great Flood within this story of Epic of Gilgamesh. So he tries to find Ut-napishtim. I'm just gonna go with that and just call it a day. He gained immortality from surviving a great flood. So Gilgamesh was trying to find him, and once he finds him, he tells Gilgamesh his story of surviving the flood. And he meets, and this is found on the 11th head tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh. He tells him that it started in a city called Shuruppak, and how one day the gods decided to make a flood. They don't really give a really good reason why. They just kind of, one of the gods was just kind of angry and just kind of happened. He was told by the god Ea to build a boat and to leave his possessions. Search out living things, reject chattels, and save their lives. Put aboard the seed of all living things into the boat. The boat that you are to build shall have her dimensions and proportions. Her width and length shall be in harmony. Roof her like the Apsu. The boat is built as instructed, and he puts all of the living things on it. The flood starts and it rains for 6 days and 7 nights. Once the raining stopped, the boat is stopped on the mountain Nimush for 6 days, and on the 7th day, Ut-napishtim sent out a dove. The dove doesn't find anywhere to perch, so it comes back. Then he sends out a swallow. It doesn't find a place to perch, so it comes back. Finally, he sends out a raven. A raven was able to find a perch to sit on and ate, and it didn't come back. And then he made a sacrifice. Enlil finds the boat and is angry because no one was supposed to survive. But the gods calmed down and they made Ut-napishtim and his wife immortal. And there's a lot more to why he was telling him this to Gilgamesh, but goes more into the epic, so I will be saving on that for when I do the Epic of Gilgamesh. What's interesting with these two flood myths is when you would compare it to the flood myth that's in the Old Testament, the Bible, in the book of the story of Noah in the book of Genesis. In chapter 7 of Genesis, the reason for the flood was because apparently everyone but this one guy's family was evil or wicked. Honestly, yeah, I found that reason very confusing. At least in the other two flood myths, it was more of the gods were just dicks. Just a very confusing reason. Anyway, so God has Noah build a boat and gets him to have two of every animal on there. It rains for about 7 days, and once it stopped, Noah released a dove, and the dove head came back with a small branch. Then the water recedes. Noah makes a sacrifice to God, and I guess everything was good. I don't know. So comparing that to the other two flood myths, there are some pretty obvious differences, but also some similarities to it. Like, with one difference being that the boat itself. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the boat was more of a square shape because of the width and length being in harmony. So you kind of have to figure that the boat will be a square shape, while the boat in Noah's story would be more of an arc. And in Gilgamesh, he's not only sent out a dove, but also a sparrow and a raven. And it was the raven who was this signal that everything's okay, and then the water, and then everything's fine. While in Genesis, it was just the dove. However, one similarity is that one similarity being that there was a sacrifice made in all three stories. And then after that, the gods weren't angry anymore. The point is that some flood myths are influenced by older flood myths. And the same can be said for about stories in general. So, next time I will be talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh. It will be a while before I get that video out because I'm still working on writing down part 1. So, it will be a while before I have that up.